All right, so welcome everybody to this IIBA Halifax chapter event. We do have a couple of things to go through and share with everybody. So first of all, welcome back. It's been a long go, but we are back. And welcome everybody from Halifax and afar. One of the advantages of these virtual meetings is being able to welcome our guests from all around the world. So we do have this wonderful presentation from Kupe, how to bring out the best of a BRD to help the team stay focused on the need. Kupe Kupersmith is an agile business analysis and project management enthusiast by day and improv comedy and red M&M fanatic by night, amongst other things. Throughout, I don't know what those other things are though. Throughout his career, Kupe has been focused on helping teams improve delivery through better collaboration, communication, teamwork, and techniques to ensure a shared understanding of the need. Being a trained improvisational comedian, Kupe is sure to make you laugh while you're learning. Kupe is a connector and has a goal in life to meet everyone. So everybody, grab your socks and let's listen to Kupe.
All right, thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh no, you have to stop sharing first. All right, should be good. And it seems like I'm having some internet connection challenges in my office here. So I'm not going to show my video. I think it's working much better when I don't have video on. But I'm excited to be here and talk about this topic. I think the topic is, well, it was really hot, you know, in the 90s and the 2000s, and it still seems to come up. Even in companies that I work with, you know, there's still questions about the BRD. There's questions about how long a BRD should be. The BRD and BRD, hopefully everybody knows that's business requirements document. And oh, before we get going too, I just love that you call each other the Hali BAs. I think I might have to move to Halifax just to call myself one of those. Or can I get any chance of a, you know, honorary Hali BA award or something? Can we do that? Is that
you're already in, Kupe.
Ah, awesome, cool. And then I want to be
part of our inner circle.
I want to be a Gander BA too. All right, so let me ask you guys a question before we get into this. And you know, I kind of joked with circle one, yes, no, maybe, like we did in elementary school or middle school when we're asking a girl out. So how do you guys want a BRD? Who, like, answer yes, no, maybe. Like, use the chat window. Hopefully you can find the chat window and just chime in. What do you think? Do you guys want a BRD? All right, Ryan, AJ say yes. Carmine
Yes.
doesn't know what it is. We got some no's, we got a maybe. I can't believe Carmine doesn't know what it is. That's interesting. But we'll help you out, Carmine, don't worry. Absolutely, says Rebecca. We got another yes. So we have a lot of yeses. Interesting. This is, usually I get more of a mix, but it seems like this group is kind of in the middle, or very highly focused on, yes, we need a BRD. So this is going to be a good conversation. I want to talk about why you guys might want that. So I think it was Rebecca highlighted, she wants a BRD because we need reference back to the business process. And even Fortune just chimed in, or is it George? Maybe Fortune's your last name. But why, like, so why do you want a BRD? Simple document contains the necessary information. If the project is bigger and in a highly audible field, yes. And Fernando, like a big old yes there, all in caps. All right, so there's good reasons to have a BRD, and we'll talk about kind of the reasons to have one, not to have one, what it looks like, what might it look like. I'll tell you off the bat here, my view is, with anything, with any kind of documentation, is you put enough into it to make sure there's a shared understanding of what we need to get to go forward. So there were years ago, I was consulting with a company and they actually asked me, like, Coop, do you think a requirements document that is 100-page long is too long? Because they felt it was too much. And I said, there's really not a right or wrong answer to that. The right answer is it long enough to convey what's needed to convey to the consumers of the said document? So that could be 5 pages, it could be 100 pages, it could be 1,000 pages. I don't really care, as long as it is doing what the team or the stakeholders need to get from it. So just quick before we get into the details, and thank you guys for chiming in. I think using the chat window is going to be a great way to interact with me as we have this conversation. So feel free to get social. That's my handle on Twitter. You see there, I have the hashtag no requirements. I'm going to go into that a little bit. And I know Hallie BAs are probably thinking, oh my God, how can you say no requirements when you're talking to all BAs, especially in Halifax? But you'll see what I mean by no requirements. I don't necessarily mean no requirements, but it is a movement that I want people to think about, to focus not so much on the detailed features as I do on the major outcomes. And then connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So there's one more thing I want to talk about, and this could be applied to any presentation, any book you read, any training class you go to, anything that you have, is the rule of 3 R's. So the first R is review. You're going to hear some things that I talk about today that are review. You guys have been BAs. I think it was Rebecca that said she was a senior BA, so that indicates she has years of experience. So for someone like Rebecca to hear something, or everything that I say is brand new to her, would be surprising. But don't shut down when you hear some of the review items, because it's good to hear review, but you might miss the next 2 R's, and the next R is reassure. So there's going to be things I talk about that you're doing today, but you didn't know anybody else was doing it. So this reassures you that you are doing the right thing and should give you the confidence to keep going. And then the final R is reveal. If you get one key thing out of the next 45 minutes that we're having this conversation, that's a huge win. So listen for the reveal. So don't shut down on the review or the reassure, but always be listening for reveal. What can you do? Something new that you're hearing, or a different way of hearing something that's going to change your behavior in how you work and operate daily. And if you get one thing out of this, then it's a huge win. If you get more, that's all gravy. All right. So I'm going to start with your own VP of Education, Jen Bedell, and she did a presentation for the Hartford chapter, I believe in January. Yep, I have the January there. And she actually did something about a BRD. It was a little different, but ended with having a conversation with the group about the pros and cons of a BRD. And if you look at the pros, it's a lot of things that you guys talked about, right? It helps clarify things. It helps, I think someone actually talked in so many terms, talked about project scope, clear picture and what's needed. Someone in the chat here talked about highly auditable project, and it helps. So that would, right? I mean, getting a list of requirements from the business perspective is what you need for most audits, right? The business needs to provide those. So a lot of the things you talked about were there. And then let's look at, I didn't see many no's, or I didn't see a lot of information from the no's. There were a couple of people that said no. Let me see if I can go back in the chat. So we had Amy Smith talk about no. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure, is it Oge? Is how you pronounce your name? Oge said no.
Yes.
Oh, good, I got that right. So, okay, why, if you're off mute, why'd you say no?
I really don't like the traditional BRD, like, the template where you have to put in both what you need and what is not necessary for a project. Like, I had a follow-up comment to say, just a simple document that contains the necessary information. Even if it's going to be an audited project, I want to know what the regulators want to see and only incorporate what's necessary, not making it a 100-pager.
Right. Yeah. And that, I mean, thank you. I think that's a big reason why a lot of people say no, right? It's because people will say it's traditional, it's too big, it's too much, right? And that's how we used to write these long drawn out BRDs. But if it's something like with anything, it's like, how can you do it? Think about those that are doing agile, right? And you hear the terms minimal viable product, right? It's what's the smallest thing that we can do to have a viable product that somebody can use and we can learn from and keep evolving and adding to it. I think it's the same thing with the BRD, and I'm going to talk about that later. So awesome. So you can see some of the things why people don't like it, right? There's pressure to get it done. It gets outdated too fast. I don't know if it's on here, but someone said too dang big, novel size. That's what Oge was talking about. And then a lot of times you're doing it so far in the beginning and taking a lot of time with it that by the time the team starts building something, you start to what was documented back 2-3 months ago is not really relevant to what we need to do today. So there could be a lot of waste if you do it in a big bang approach and do it all up front. So let me, to help set the stage, I want to talk about the path story, and this is a personal story in my neighborhood. So I lived at the bottom of a dead end street, and to get to the pubs, to get to the kids' school, we had to walk all the way up this big hill, go over one block and come down another block to get to the pubs and the kids' schools. Now, I will say there's two things. One, it's a first world problem, right? And we could have bigger problems. And two, don't ask me about why the pubs and the kids' schools are so close to each other. That is another issue, I think, in our neighborhood that we probably need to address. But regardless, we wanted to get to the pubs and the kids' schools faster. So it was about a mile walk, going up this hill, over and down the other block. So we wanted to come up with a faster way to get to the pubs and the kids' school. So what happened was we decided, well, we wanted to build a path, and we actually talked to the city about cutting through some neighbors' yards to build us a path. Well, when the city got involved, they actually had to go over a creek, and everything had to be ADA compliant, and it was going to cost what they said $100,000 to build this little bridge over a creek that we had to go over. So we decided, the city said, nope, we're not doing it. And my neighbors and we all said, well, we should try to figure out another way to do this. So another set of neighbors gave us some land, and you can see the path in this picture. What I didn't do is get a picture before, but this is after the path was complete. But our neighbors gave us this spot on the side of their fence, and the other neighbors allowed us, it was an apartment building, they allowed us to use this strip. So we got our shovels out, we got our pickaxes, clippers, everything you need to clear the path. Now, this was completely filled with bushes, trees, grass, like it was in really bad shape. You couldn't even see through there. So one Saturday morning, me, 10 other neighbors are sitting at the bottom of what is going to be the path. And we started having a conversation about what the path was going to look like. And, somebody's throwing out there, it needs to be 4 feet wide. It has to have steps every 5 feet because we knew it was kind of an incline. We talked about a number of things that the path had to have, and we were debating back and forth, and really good debate happened around the ground cover. Somebody said, let's just leave it dirt. Someone said, no, we're going to put wood chips. Another person said, we can get the recycled rubber and put it down. Other people said rock. And we were just going back and forth of debating about what we should have in the path and what the path looks like. Well, at an hour into this conversation, I kind of said, hey, you know what? Like, we're not getting anywhere. We just keep debating. No one can make a decision on what, is it 4 feet wide? Is it 3 feet wide? We have no clue what's behind all these bushes and all the trees that we have to get to. So what's the goal that we're trying? Let's go back to the goal of the path, right? And the goal of the path is to get from one end to the other faster. And I said, well, let's dig a little deeper. Like what, you know, what would it look like at the end of the day? How do we know we're successful? I think I used those exact words. And someone finally came out and said, if I can walk up the path with my flip-flops, then we have done a great job. And that became like our mantra, right? It was like, we need to walk up and down the path with our flip-flops. So I said, okay, if that is our goal, if that's our ultimate outcome, then what do we have to do first? And someone said, well, we got to clear it and at least see what's back there. So that's what we did. We all got our tools and we just started clearing, and we took a day to just clear the path. And it was a dirt path, right? It was just all complete dirt. And somebody said, okay, let's see somebody get their flip-flops out and see if we can walk up the path. And it was really rough kind of getting up the path. People were slipping. That night it actually rained, so we tried to walk in our flip-flops when it's raining, and it was all muddy and the mud was just kind of running down the path. Well, so then the next day it was like, okay, what do we need to do next? And someone's like, well, we got to work out this ground cover issue. So we put wood chips down and we tried wood chips. And what do you think happens when, you know, you walk on wood chips with flip-flops? Doesn't work out too well. A lot of splinters for everybody. So we just kept adding things until we got to a point where we were able to walk up and down the path with our flip-flops. And so what we were doing, right, was we were debating about outputs versus outcomes. So in our path, right, we ended up, and let me go back to the picture. There's things in the picture on the left that, one, we didn't end up deciding until the end that we were going to go with rock. There's a railing on there. We never talked about a railing up front. But again, when we tested walking with our flip-flops, we knew we had to have a railing at certain points. You see a quiet zone sign. Well, at some point, the people walking up and down the path were getting really loud in the morning, walking their kids. And there was a high school age girl that lived in that house right next door, and her window was right near the path. So the owners there put a sign out, right, to keep quiet in the early morning and the late evening. So there were a lot of things that we didn't even talk about that came up in the path story until we started building. So my message to you guys, and this is the long traditional BRD, like, don't take a lot of time debating about the specific features of the outputs that you are going to have, because those will be outdated as soon as you put them in a BRD. To me, that's not even a business requirements document, right? This is now functional details. And I think that's what goes into a lot of BRDs and why people get frustrated with BRDs. So don't talk a lot about the things on the left, because some of those things might be in, some of them won't be in. But you really, a BRD, and what you need to get set on are the outcomes, the things that you're trying to accomplish. And this should be in some form of either documentation or at least shared understanding. If you want to call it a BRD, call it a BRD, right? For us, our outcome was faster route to the schools and the pubs, and the need to be able to wear our flip-flops going up and down the path. That's the type of thing that needs to be in a BRD, not the things on the left. And I think people get frustrated, and why it becomes 100 pages is because we're talking about all the things on the left. So I want to give you one other component here, talking about kind of the levels of conversations to have, right? When getting to the pubs, this is like a strategic conversation, the high level strategy. This is something me and my neighbors wanted to do, right? We decided we want to get there faster, right? So that was one conversation we had. And we decided it was worth to explore different initiatives on how to get to the pubs faster. And I actually find it interesting, I don't even talk about the kids' school anymore. Like, so let's really get down to brass tacks. I should probably taken out the kids' schools, and it was all about the pubs. But anyway, the path was an initiative, a way for us to get there, right? That wasn't the only way. So what are some other options? So I think you need, like, in your BRD, you should be talking about these two top things, right? Like, what is the strategy? What is the goal? getting to the pubs was our goal, right? And then the initiative was a path. So what are some options that we can do to get there? So what are some other ways we could have talked about getting to the pubs faster? Go ahead, put in the chat room. All right, we got some coming in now. Awesome. Yeah, pogo stick. Thank you, Jen. Right, you could have took. Everybody could have owned a pogo stick. I think I'd rather walk, but that is an option. Yep, bicycles. Yep, that would be a way to do it. What else? Get creative. What are catapult? Even better, right? Yeah, we could have set up a catapult and just like threw us over the houses. Yep, could have had a taxi, or I've heard someone before, like, you know, we all buy a car together, and that car is the one that we all use to get there. Piggyback, right? Yeah, I don't have to walk. My neighbor could walk and piggyback me all the way up. Other people say Uber, scooter. I actually own a scooter. Okay, so yep, I actually use that to get there. But drinking and then, you know, driving home on a scooter is never good. Awesome, but there's a ton of different ways you can get there. We decided a path, and then our delivery method is where a lot of the requirements are going to come. Like, what are you going to build? And I think this is where in our BRDs we slap way too much stuff into the delivery aspect of the BRD. So we want, our first option was the city builds the path. That failed, right? I mean, we started now driving into detailed requirements with the city. They had people come out, they were doing assessments, yada, yada, yada. It failed. So we went back up to the initiative level and said, okay, do we still want, is there another way? The city's not going to build it. That was our way to build this. So what is another option? And we stuck with a path and just picked a different way to build the path, right? But we could have come up with scooters, piggyback, catapult, taxi, all the things that you guys just rattled off. We could have at this point determined, do we want to choose another initiative and then go down to what we're going to build? And if we could have decided at the option level to go back to strategy and say, okay, the city's not doing it. Is this even worth for us to explore? And we could have said no and ended the whole conversation, right? But that's a way you can use these levels of conversations or levels of needs to determine where you are. And I think the two top levels, this is what should be in a BRD, not all the things down at the delivery level. And I think that, again, that's where people get frustrated with BRDs because they go so deep. I forgot it. I don't know if it was AJ, somebody said it earlier. I know Oge said like way too big. AJ talked about length of time to implementation, right? If you go into and spend all the time on the delivery side and wait months and months and months to get to the point where you can actually start delivering, then you're going to have a problem, right? It was just like us with our path. How much time were we going to take to talk about what the path could look like versus actually start building the path, right? And learn from it and move forward and make adjustments as we went. So this is the point where I try to recruit you into my, I was going to say my cult, but it's really not a cult. It's a movement, right? That I want to bring you on in the hashtag no requirements movement. Now this came out, I thought of it because there was actually a no projects movement that I heard about. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm in the BA space. I like playing in this world. I actually think there should be no requirements movement. And the reason I say that is most of the things that people talk about requirements are really just options. They're not requirements. The only requirement, you know, if I go back to the path and we go back to the outcomes versus output, what people think are requirements are all those things on the left. I completely disagree. Those are options. What is on the right, which are very few things, are requirements. Like me and my neighbors, we said we want to get to the schools and the pubs faster, and we have to do that in our flip-flops. That's the requirement, right? Going back to different options you guys had, I can get to the pubs piggybacking, you know, on somebody. And wearing my flip-flops, I can take a taxi and get to the pubs faster, and I can wear my flip-flops. Catapult might be a little scary because I don't know what you know, where I land, and I might need something, you know, better support on my feet than flip-flops, but you get the point, right? It's the things on the right are the things that are required. The things on the left are options, and they can come in and out, and it doesn't matter, right? So a 4-foot wide path, somebody might say that, but it's like, okay, let's get in there, let's clear the path. And you know what? We don't have 4 feet. Can we live with the 2.5 feet that we ended up with? And the answer was, yeah, sure. Let's do 2.5 feet. Okay, great. That 4 feet is now not a requirement. The ground cover, we actually started with wood chips, and then we changed wood chips to rock in many places because when it was on a steeper part of the path, and when it rained, the wood chips would just come pouring down to the bottom. Also, like I mentioned earlier, it wasn't comfortable the whole way up the path to be in flip-flops and wood chips and getting splinters. So those things on the left, this is why I say no requirements. Like those, the things we typically talk about in the requirements conversation are not requirements. They're options to be implemented, and they can change at any time, right? What couldn't change for us, or what was a larger conversation that had to change, was do we want to abandon the need to get to the pubs and the schools faster? So hopefully, anybody, in the chat window, I have 7.5 people. Actually, I think after the Hartford IIBA chapter that I talked to, I think I have 11.25 people in. So how many people do we have? Carmine, are you in? Carmine, Jen, Amy, AJ, who's in? Let's see, I see new. All right, yeah, Jen's in, Fernando's in, Carmine, yes. All right, awesome. So I have a few more people. So this is the mantra I want you guys to continue into your, you know, with your organization. So let's have the MVP conversation here. And most of you know MVP, right? I said it earlier, minimal viable product. But that could be anything, right? A product, in our case, we are talking about, we're talking about a BRD, requirements document, things that help. And again, I'll go back to, I think they're needed. Like it's not a yes or no that they're not needed. It's doing it to the right level for the right people at the right time. And we got to think about that. Don't just do a requirements document because someone gave you a template and this is what had to be filled out. Do things that make sure there's a shared understanding of the overall need and goal that we're trying to get to. So with the upfront BRD, and we've talked about this a little, it's like it takes time, right? There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of debating going on. There's, it might take, if there's a lot of stakeholders, if it's a large project, and this, what's interesting, somebody earlier said, well, if it's a large project, we need all those components. Well, the larger the project, if you're doing an upfront BRD, then that's going to take a very long time. And that's even more time to get to implementation of anything and learn from it. And I think in our world today, how we operate, how we do work, what makes sense, the speed at which developers can get certain things done, it's better for people to not just talk about things and see things written on a piece of paper or even see pictures, is to actually feel, touch the actual system and validate that it's heading in the right direction. So I feel it's the same thing with the BRD. So let's not do the long drawn out BRD. Let's take an elaborative approach to how we build the BRD. And then the same approach is used to build the product. Now, I will say, I work in an environment that it's very hard to build something and release things incrementally. A lot of times we have to build them incrementally, but we don't release for maybe 3 months, 6 months. There are some initiatives we have that can release on a monthly basis, but we're not, I don't work for Amazon, where they're pumping out code to production. I think, I forgot how much, but it's just stupid. It's like 11 lines, new things, new features get pushed out every second or something like that. They're constantly pushing things out. We don't live in that world, right? But I think you can still build things, learn from it, and decide whether something is needed or not before you actually release something. So the same conversation. So this picture, you could probably imagine this is an Agile-ish, picture of building something, right? You learn, you understand what the business needs, and then you decide to build something, you iterate with the smallest thing possible, you measure, are you heading in the right direction, are you not? And then you learn from that and you go to the next thing. So in this model, where do the business requirements come in, right? They come in right there. This is the learning aspect. So it's build a component of the business requirements and even getting down into the options if you want, right? And then like that, from that learn place to the business requirements up into the build, you are getting from the business requirements to the functional and acceptance criteria and everything you need to build. You're building something, and then you're determining what's working, what's not, and then you're layering in the next level of work. And the way I like to talk about this stuff is using epic briefs. So what I'm going to talk about next and kind of wrap up the rest of this conversation is the content that I believe is needed for a business requirements document. Now, you don't have to do it in this format. We partnered with a company called Leading Agile to help kind of build out some of our framework, and they introduced me to the epic brief, and we use this as a guide of what we think is needed in business requirements documents to get buy-in so that we can then build something and move forward. So I'm going to go over those components, but you don't have to have it in a spreadsheet. You can put it in Jira, you can put it anywhere, but I think the key is the spirit of what I think needs to be included. Now, hopefully most of these things are going to be kind of very familiar to you. So the first is the problem statement, right? And many of you have seen kind of this format. The problem of something affects this group or these people, and the impact is, there's pain points or a problem from something, and then a successful solution has certain components, right? So if I extrapolate this back to the path, the problem for us was it was taking too long to get to the pubs and the kids' schools, which affects, now there's a time management aspect. We got to take more time. People that were out of shape had to walk up this huge hill, and that impact is, the pain for us was time, effort. Some people are having heart attacks walking up that hill. And a successful solution for us was one that would allow us to get to those places faster in our flip-flops, right? And desired outcome goes into the flip-flops thing too, right? It's these conversations that you have to have with your stakeholders, and it's not easy. I'm talking about this and we're flying through in about 50 minutes. These are not easy conversations, right? Because what do most people want to do? They want to talk about the details. They want to talk about the path, and it needs to be 4 feet wide and has to have rock and has to have handrails. So they don't go here and kind of, you need to pull them up into kind of this world, right? So you can see some things that are listed here as in terms of desired outcome and success criteria. So whether it's revenue lift, cost savings, customer experience things, those are conversations that you can have with your stakeholders of where would there be a change from the current state, right? So we're not looking for specifics, but we are looking for high level things that will change, and allow the teams that are going to build something figure out how they can accomplish that, and not like pigeonhole them into doing specific things, changing the color of this button on this screen to blue, right? And that's what we find we get caught up with our BRDs too much. So other things you can have in here is user personas, right? The people, like who are you actually doing this for, right? Like for our path, we actually, you know, we talked about that, like who needs to walk up the path in their flip-flops? Is it, you know, me alone, or is it me with my kids? Can I bring my dog up the path? Like we talked about, like, and that determined kind of different things for us, you know. And someone said, well, yeah, you know, I have little kids, I want to be able to walk them up in their flip-flops too. So it wasn't just the adults. We had, from a testing standpoint, we had to make sure we had little kids that could also do it. So, and that's probably, I don't remember specifically, but that's probably why we put handrails on there. So who, you know, the people that are going to do it in the context of usage, when, so for us, when is the path going to be used for, and this was another thing, I don't know if you can see on the picture, but we had little lights that came up there, but our context of usage was 24 hours a day, right? We wanted to be able to walk on the path. So at one point we tried walking down the path, but me and other friends, we were coming back from the pubs and it was late, it was really dark, we couldn't see crap. So it was dangerous at that point. So we put little solar panel lights in there, and every year we kind of have to refresh those lights and make sure that they're still working. So these are key things that you have to know, right? Still nothing in here about details of the 4-foot path or even those lights, right? The persona and the context actually helped us make a decision down the road of how we can solve that, right? So now we are starting to get into the solution, so or a high level solution. So this, the epic brief before was about the why. Now is time to bring in maybe some other people, and if you're in IT like me, you're bringing in people that can start thinking about high level architecture, high level solutions. We actually, when you talk about high level architecture, we actually brought in, there was a landscape architect that we brought in to give us some guidance about, like, before, one, we cleared it, and then there was some guidance we needed about some other areas, and we brought in a landscape architect to say, hey, is this even going to be safe, or what are the things we might need to do to make sure it's safe? There's constraints, business risks, technical risks, that you have to think about, that these are good things to think about up front, but they, again, they're not going to take months and years. They should take hours and days to break this down. And then finally, the last piece, and where I work and the groups that I work with, we're using Agile and stories. The last thing that I like to have to get consensus and buy-in that we're headed down the right path is not necessarily, again, these stories that we lay out in the high level story map are, it's back to my options, right? This is what we think we're going to do. These are the high level stories to get buy-in that the solution that everybody has in their mind that will meet the need does actually hypothetically get us there, right? We have, before we're given money to move forward with anything, people have to have a sense of that, yes, I think this can get us there. We have a hypothesis, if we do these 20, 30 things, that we're going to meet the goal. So that high level story map gives a sense for two things. One, it helps you think of, well, how long do we think this is going to take? And two, is this kind of the vision that everybody had of a successful solution? Now, again, the problem is where people start is that a story map and the detail stories, like getting down into the detail level of the story before they even start building anything. And I think you should have that, the high level story map, but not go into the details until you get the go ahead. And now, so what I feel like when you're breaking out your projects, they should be broken out into these epics of work. And then constantly, like as you're building one of the epics, start detailing out the next epic and getting that ready, and have a constant flow of work to the team. right? So what I'm trying to do in areas is have a team that breaks out what I call the business requirements, these epic level requirements. And then there's Scrum teams that are taking that and moving forward in building stuff. And then that business requirements team actually gets onto the next epic. So at the end of the day, we have, I think it was Oge that talked about 100-page document. At the end of the day, we might have a 100-page document, but it's the decisions that got made along the way. We didn't create a 100-page document on day one. That 100-page document was done and now could be used as an artifact if we need to go back to determine why we did something, if we need to change it later. But so it might be an artifact that is used at the end of the day. And someone talked about we need audit requirements, right? At the end, you're going to audit a project at the end of the day. You're still going to have that requirements document. It's just not going to be built up front. It's going to be built and elaborated along the way, and it will be probably more accurate at the end of the day. And it's built in time, like in real time when it's needed to be used. So I'm going to stop there. We got about 10 minutes left. And just ask you guys a question, ask you guys to pipe in. So I talked about earlier the reveals, right? There was the 3 R's: review, reassure, reveal. So what is something that you guys learned today that you're gonna take away and use in your daily business? And we can. All right, so Rebecca talked about the epic brief. All right, a lot of people hitting on that. Awesome. One of the things, before I get to more of the comments, but there was I don't know if it was a debate or not, but there was a conversation in the chat. Oge said requirements are options that may or may not be implemented. So I agree with that. And then AJ said not all requirements are options. So I'm interested, AJ, in what you mean by that. It's an interesting take, and I want to make sure I understand before I comment on what you mean. So while I'm waiting for AJ to chime in about that, Oge talked about progressive elaboration, right? I'm glad, Oge, you picked up on that, because that's exactly what you were taught. You don't like the 100-page document and having to create that, but you can create it over time, right? Again, it might still not be 100 pages. It could be 30 pages, whatever that number is, but it was whatever was needed to get a shared understanding from the group and get everybody to buy in on how we're moving forward, right? So, and we do it over time. We don't wait to build it all up front. Jen talked about options over outcomes, right? So it was outputs over outcomes, but but you actually twisted it and used my words there, right? Because so those outputs are options, right? Great, awesome. Gonna have to update my slides. Rebecca talked about, like, how it can be used to summarize potentially an email to keep everybody informed. Absolutely. I think Rebecca, you talked about the epic brief, but yeah, that's where documentation does help, right? The movement around no documentation, I think, was misled or misinterpreted, because I don't know about you guys, I mean, and definitely with COVID, more and more teams are remote. We're not sitting, in a room. When the Agilists talked about Agile, the ones that wrote the manifesto, they were talking about, oh, we could all be in a room together and we just knock stuff out. It's conversations over documentation, but we don't live in that world, right? So to say no documentation is just silly. You need to have things that are documented, a place where people can go and kind of look up information. Sorry, let me see, lost my spot. So AJ chimed in, some requirements are mandatory, thus must be implemented. Thus I make the distinction between with options. So, even, so I don't know if you're talking about regulatory items. I even think regulatory things are not mandatory. So I don't know, this would be a good debate. I don't think we have enough time, but I would, maybe when I come hang out with the Hallie BAs, we can talk about that one more. So I am, hold on, you know, I'm gonna blow this up. All right, this makes it easier. All right, epic brief, progressive elaboration, options, a minimal document that gets elaborated at the right time. So Amy, yep, talking about the elaborative approach. And then making sure I focus on the outcomes and try not to solution the problem at the requirements level. Yeah, I think that, you know, I think that is the key. Like, now here's the twist to all this. A lot of people try to talk about the solution. That's just how we're built, right? Especially in technology today, everybody has technology all around them. They're using it all the time. Everybody feels that they understand and have knowledge of what a solution should look like, because they're dealing with technology every day. So they think they have kind of the best approach and way to get there. So we talk in terms of solutions, right? So when you guys are dealing with your stakeholders, they're going to think in terms of solutions. So that's okay. Like, don't get too worked up and go crazy. Well, Coop said not to talk about that yet. That's an option. That's not the outcome, right? But what you need to do is roll them back into the outcome conversation, right? So move them back. So if we did implement this, and this, what outcome do you think is going to be achieved? What would life look like at the end of the day if we do that? What are you expecting what behavior change are you expecting from the user group? What, you know, if it's revenue related or cost related, what, you know, how much money do you think we're going to make if we implement these features on our website? You know, and try to roll them back. And then, you know, they might not have an answer, and they might not even know like why they want that feature implemented, and, you know, work with them to get to that answer, because the things that they come up with are options just like everybody else. So make sure, if the team doesn't know the overall outcome, the desired goal that you're trying to do with the project, then you're just at a higher risk of, you know, having the answer, yeah, you implemented what I wanted, but it's not what I needed, right? So you're trying to get to what they need before you do too much implementation or take too much time within a creating a requirement stock. So awesome. You guys have been great, and thank you for all the conversation through chat. I love to hear myself talk, but I definitely like hearing you guys and your take on things too. So let me jump to this first, and then I'll go to my final thoughts. So if we want to stay connected, AJ, connect with me. We can talk more about mandatory stuff and all this good things. But you can, best way is connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. And then I'll just end with my final thought is around this MVP conversation. So I think we use this MVP conversation all the time when it comes about building a product, and like the products that we work on or the systems that we work on, the technology systems that we work on. But you can still use this in terms of a product like a business requirements document. And I believe the elaborative approach is better than taking a lot of time up front to build this thing that gets jammed in with a lot of those outputs or a lot of those options. And really, you can go a lot faster through that process and get to implementation quicker. And at the end of the day, that's where the rubber meets the road. It's not the requirements that are written on paper. It's the actual systems that you build that people can touch, feel, see, and determine if that's going to meet the mark. And when you implement it, you get to measure that, right? Did it meet the mark? So you want to get to that as fast as possible, but making sure that everybody's bought in, has a shared understanding of where you're going. So thank you guys so much. That's what I have for today. So I could, Jen, I can pass it back to you for some final things, or we can just go have a great evening.
Well, just hang on for a minute, Coop. First, I want to thank you so much for participating, for being our big draw. We have 32 people here tonight, which is awesome. I think that's all because of you, Coop. So thanks
Oh.
for giving us your time.
Awesome. Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome.